All right, everyone, another day, another step closer to the Uniparty, basically just pulling back the curtains and showing everyone the blank cement wall at the back of the stage where the political puppet show is going on. Link in the description, archived, of course. The Uniparty is being more and more transparent. Most of them not. Most of them are like, well, we got to defend democracy. It's vague and vacuous. When they talk about Trump and indictment gate, which is what it's become at this point, it's basically a giant circus about Trump's re-election bid. There's some fear and there's some, I think, true animus against him because Trump was originally, he was a neoliberal member of the donor class and he had all the toys along with all the others and he played nice with the others, the other billionaires, corporatists. He partied around with the Clintons. He partied with the legacy media and he chose to throw that away. Donor class individuals, generally, unless they're being called on to enter a race in order to really support other people like Bloomberg did, throwing $100 million at Florida didn't do too much now, did it? For example, the donor class is not generally meant to also be in the direct political class, especially when they don't snap back to the center when they're nominated. I think Trump genuinely in 2016 hoodwinked a lot of his old friends, and this is why he's been left without a lot of allies within the structure of government, etc., because he alienated himself to them. They figured at first, okay, it's a joke campaign, he knows he won't win, and so he's doing it to sell a book or something, or maybe pitch a new show. When it became clear on Super Tuesday that was not the case, they got angry at him, I think, and they tried everything to stop him, but by then it was too late. The problem is it was too close to the general election already for them to fortify the 2016 election. By the way, their fortification barely even worked in 2020. All of the Trump is unelectable bullshit is really mythological. Now a handful of Uniparty members, though, are very openly, and they're not even waiting for the primaries to begin, very openly proclaiming their intent to fortify the 24 election. Take a look again at link in the description, archived of course, and you'll see it. It's in black and white there. We must fortify, we must mobilize every resource from the top to the bottom at all levels of society to stop Trump. Well, that doesn't sound like you're confident that you'll win, number one. It sounds like you genuinely are fearful. It's certainly an incitement towards various behaviors. You're talking about all levels of society, so you're going beyond, hey, people need to go and harvest ballots, knock on doors, etc. You're endorsing the legal persecution of Trump. You're probably calling for media lockdown. So, basically the legacy media tries to simultaneously starve Trump of oxygen while vilifying him when they have to talk about him at all. You're arguably inciting people towards violence to try to silence Trump fans and stuff like that. It is certainly be advocating censorship, and we've seen it be advocated many, many times in relation to this. Trump, for all of his faults, and he does have many of them, he's not a perfect person, is quite clearly at this point the only one that genuinely scares the establishment. They're not scared, bravado aside, they're not really scared of RFK Jr. The only way he would have a shot is if Biden croaks or stands down, and he simply happens to be in the race and have technical viability at like 15-point support. They're not afraid of DeSantis. If they were afraid of DeSantis, they'd be hitting him harder. Instead, I see the normal ghoulish takes by like Salon or HuffPo talking about how DeSantis is racist and DeSantis is this and that. I'm not seeing the persecutorial side, and I'm certainly not seeing the sort of demotion of political content online by the usual bad actors within big tech towards DeSantis and his fans. In fact, if anything, on certain sites he seems to be amplified somewhat. Part of that, by the way, is because of algorithmic hijacking. It's sort of what BreadTube did. Yeah, all attention is good attention when you're promoting a political cause, I suppose. And you look at some of the goofballs on Twitter for a great example. This is effectively an open call, though, to weaponize the entire governmental and legal structure against one person who supposedly, in public, these individuals profess he can't win. And then occasionally you get a more lucid story. Hey, Trump actually could win, and here's why you should panic about that. Well, that's funny. The first 3 years of Trump's presidency were pretty smooth. There wasn't an inflation problem. We hadn't gotten any new wars. We were doing good diplomacy in Afghanistan, North Korea, and places like that. It was a feel-good era. I certainly felt better about the overall socioeconomic state of the United States then as opposed to now. And I didn't even have to flee because of the lockdownerism and stuff like that. Of course, you'll remember I first came to the Netherlands October of that year, several months before COVID broke out. There are still people that spread the rumor that I fled the country to get away from how terrible things were. They were actually peaking when I left. They were actually perfect. A few more months and I wouldn't have been able to travel to the Netherlands at all, being a non-citizen and unwilling to undergo certain medical procedures in order to freely travel, as is my right as an American. But the Uniparty has slowly, they're boiling the frog. This is why Trump is antagonizing them, by the way. He's trying to make them show their ass. I can understand his strategy in with the snap of a finger. It's really that simple and that easy. He's trying right now to get Jack Smith and the judges on these cases and so forth to persecute him even harder. He's trying to force their hand. He's having some degree of success. The current legal queries that you have going on right now, mixed with the bravado of the left in literally calling to silence, to literally gag Trump, fretting about his criticism of Mike Pence, for example, claiming that it's a jury intimidation, when Mike Pence hasn't taken the stand yet. Number one may or may not be called number two. And number three, of course, happens to be in the same political race running for the same office that Trump is. Well, this litmus test, the standard that's being applied to Trump is not applied to literally anybody else. Liberals, by the way, understand this. They just invert it and they say, well, Trump wouldn't be getting so much deference if he weren't his former president currently running. Well, yeah, you have to give deference in order for him to actually be given his full constitutional rights. He does have the right to run for office, for example. I know that the left doesn't like the idea of people speaking and expressing themselves freely anyway on a normal day, but the standard applied to Trump is even more depraved than they apply to content creators, and they've been beating up on them for years. So when I see this, I say the Uniparty is becoming a bit more honest, ironically. They're telling you what their plans are. Just like Bloomberg a few weeks before the 2020 election told you exactly what was going to happen. On election night, Trump will have won bigly, but then the mail-in ballots will start coming in. They're prepping to do it again. But they're not pulling out all the stops that they're currently pulling out because they believe that there's a 100% chance that they actually pull it off. They're facing increased scrutiny at the state level and local level, and sometimes even legally. More scrutiny. They're facing a situation where their own incumbent, their Uniparty guy, is falling apart at the seams on a regular basis. They're literally trying to hide him from public view as much as possible, to the point where he's not even reasonably expected to campaign at all. Trump, meanwhile, going to rallies several times a week. And he's got a streamlined, at this point, lower budget campaign certainly than before, and he's still running far ahead in the polls of where he was in 2016 or 2020. There was never a period like there have been over time, over the last year, in which Trump was even close to 50-50 in a matchup against either Clinton or Biden. He was 4 points behind Clinton in the aggregate on election night, came out squeaking ahead. He was a few points behind Biden. Again, Hong Kong totally fair electioneering aside, he was running at a different level than he currently is. I genuinely think that they're more afraid than anything else. That's about all. Peace out.